journey. There are many stories in the Bible which we learn from childhood. They may be found in a rather complete form, such as the stories of Ruth or Esther. But the story of Joseph has so many facets that you have to search through the scriptures to find the beginning and the end. This is a search for the end. The question is, where are Joseph's bones? So we will start at the beginning. We will start with Abraham. So if you'll open your Bibles to Genesis 13:18, these are not too hard to follow because there's only one diversion where we go across the Bible to another spot. Most of them are in order. In Genesis 13:18, Abram moved his tents and went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord. So check your map and you'll see a circle around Hebron. Then we skip to Genesis 23:17. 23:17. So Ephron's field and Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field, was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. Now Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. With the help of his mother, Rebekah, Jacob tricked his father into receiving Esau's blessing. Esau was so angry that he vowed that when his father was dead, he would kill Jacob. So Rebekah told Jacob to flee to her brother Laban in Haran. So look at the top of your first map and you'll see that Haran is way north. The area of that country was called Paddan Aram, and it's at the top of your map. After working for Laban for many years, Jacob returned to Canaan with his wives and children and flocks. He learned that Esau was going to accept his return. So now we go to Genesis 33:18. 33:18. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. So check your map for Shechem. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. Now here we know that Jacob raised his sons. One of them became his favorite because he was the son of Rachel, who Jacob loved the most. As a mark of his affection, he gave Joseph a coat of many colors, and we have that coat here today. Carolyn is going to model it for us.
Wow.
You know how many of these biblical treasures I own now, but
Wow.
Carolyn got this.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Handmade by my niece.
Oh.
She's talented.
Cool.
Yes, please display.
Don't you feel a little bit jealous?
Yes, I
Well, her
do.
niece makes her stuff. Let's
Wow.
start there. That's kind of nice.
That's
Yeah.
very nice.
Cool.
Joseph's brothers were so jealous that they sold him into slavery, where he was taken to Egypt. He eventually obtained a position second only to Pharaoh and was able to save his family from starvation. His father Jacob, who had been taken to Egypt at the time of the famine, gave instructions about his bones as he approached his death. So now we're going to Genesis 49:29. I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, in Canaan, which Abraham bought as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite, along with the field. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah. Jacob had buried Rachel, if you remember, near Bethlehem as he moved south to Bethel. Part of our journey is difficult because Jacob did move around several times. It is on his way from Shechem down to Bethel. Rachel died in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin. So now we're going to Genesis 52. So Rachel didn't get to be buried with the rest of the family, but up till then, they were all together at Hebron. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. Now we call Jacob Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Now we're jumping down to verse 4. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, "If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear on oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear." So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Jacob's household, and his brothers, and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with them. It was a very large company. Now we're jumping down to verse 10. When they reached the threshing floor of Atad near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly, and there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "The Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning." Go to verse 12. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abram had bought as a burial place for from Ephron the Hittite, along with the field. After burying his father, Jacob returned to Egypt, together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. Verse 22. Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, also the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Verse 24, then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of the land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jacob made the sons of Israel swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. This is the one place we're going to jump over to, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 22. Hebrews 11:22. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. Who can tell me how many years it was before the children of Israel got to leave Egypt?
400. 400 years.
Yes, thank you, Sue. It was 400 years. So there's that coffin with Joseph's bones. And it has sat there for almost 400 years because Jacob was a young man when he went there, and we know that they were there for 400 years. So what happened to that coffin? We hear the story of Moses crossing, wandering in the wilderness. Where is the coffin? Numbers 13:2. Send men. Have you got Numbers now? Numbers 13:2. We just made another jump back to the Old Testament. Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children from Israel. From each tribe of their father you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. And at some point he names off, God has already chosen those leaders. He names off every one of them. One of the leaders that he names is Caleb. And so now we go to Numbers 13:6. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jehunah. Numbers 13:22. And they went up through the south and came to Hebron. The descendants of Anak were there. Numbers 13:23. There we saw the giants. The descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. Numbers 13:6. And Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. The land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land of the Lord. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. So Caleb has seen the giants, and he doesn't care. He's still convinced that if God is with them, they can take the land. Go to Numbers 14:22. Because all these men have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test now these 10 times, and have not heeded my voice, they shall certainly not see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who rejected me see it. This is God speaking. The first time they reached Canaan. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it. Numbers 14:31. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. Numbers 28:22. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and he laid his hands on him and inaugurated him. Joshua 24:32. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem in the tract of land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. As the children of Israel arrived back in the promised land after Egyptian captivity and a long journey home, the land was divided by the 12 tribes. The part that was later called Samaria fell mostly to the tribe of Manasseh.
Joshua.
My original question was, where were Joseph's bones? Were they buried in Hebron with his father Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, and Sarah? So I started this research, and then I stopped there with the question, because we know that Caleb was requested Hebron as his inheritance, and God said, you shall have it. Now, why did Caleb want Hebron? That's where the giants were. That was the most difficult part of the land. But it was Caleb who said, we can do it. And it was a land of milk and honey. It was a gorgeous land, and the giants were living there, and he was like, no problem, I can do this. God will be with me. So Caleb actually got Hebron. So this made me think, well, did Caleb have the bones? Did he take them back and bury them with the other relatives? But he didn't. The bones went with the children, and they are buried right on the border between the land that was given to Ephraim and Manasseh. And I have to tell you now that I did not find the bones. Ron Butler found them. I stopped too soon. I digressed off with Caleb and thought, he's got them. But Ron kept going, and he found them. So now we know that Joseph was buried near to the place where he was sold by his brothers. That's where he grew up, in Shechem, and that's where he is buried. And the Bible tells us that. Shechem was right on the border. The land south of Ephraim was given, and then the land south of Ephraim was given to Benjamin. So those three boys got that land right in a row. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, those sons were right together. And of course, Ephraim and Manasseh were the descendants of Joseph. So they were all Rachel's children. And Caleb got the land at Hebron. So this was not an easy journey for Ron either, because he got on his computer and he found that other people had looked for those bones. Now, he not, I can't say we anymore. He found those bones in the Bible. The Bible tells us right where they are, that Jacob was buried at Shechem. And he found all of these other accounts, in John 4:4-6, in the New International Version, we read that Jesus had to go through Samaria. Well, that's part of that land. This is close to where the bones are buried. Shechem became Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. And so if it had been me, when I'm traveling across the country and I stop and I see a sign, a historical marker on the side of the road, I'd stop and read it. But Jesus was concerned with the woman at the well, with the people. He did not say, "Oh, where are the bones buried?" Because he was close. He was close to Joseph's grave at that point. Another secular account connects the well and the bones. Long before Jacob was journeying through the land which the Lord had promised to his fathers, and he came to Shechem, and he bought a piece of land there for 100 pieces of money. Here Jacob dug a well some 150 feet deep in the limestone rock, and afterward Jacob gave this piece of land to his son Joseph. Then you remember Joseph died in Egypt, and when the children of Israel came out of Egypt to take possession of the promised land, they brought up the bones of Joseph and buried them in this piece of ground. That's in Joshua 24:32. So if you want to know where they are, that's the last place to look. Joshua 24:32. So this guy was right. Then the land was settled by the children of Israel, each tribe having its share, and the part that was later called Samaria fell mostly to the tribe of Manasseh. After many years, the king of Assyria came and conquered this part of the country, and to keep it more completely in subjection, he took away the Jews who lived there and carried them as captives to districts near Nineveh, and brought people from distant places to live here in Samaria. And here was another one. Caleb and his spies had walked hundreds of miles up to the northernmost part of Canaan and back again. So the map that you have on top, they covered that whole territory. His feet had trod on the whole country, but of all Palestine that could have been his for the asking, Caleb chose Hebron. This author says, I think he wanted Hebron because there were the Anakite giants that had so terrified his fellow scouts 45 years previously. We looked like grasshoppers in their eyes, they whimpered. Bring them on, says Caleb. There's no match. They're no match for the Lord. 45 years before he had counsel. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. That was in Numbers 14:9. Now he has a chance to prove it as leader of the men of Judah. The giants represent the enemies of conquest, and Caleb is ready for them. There's another account by a person who was a Muslim. And this one is a Muslim tradition, but it's not right. Because they didn't have the Bible. The Bible tells us that Joseph was buried at Shechem. The tomb of Joseph is in the plot of ground lying outside of Solomon's enclosure in Haran. It stands opposite the tomb of Jacob and is near that of his forefathers, Abraham and Isaac. Now, Abraham states that he was requested by one of the Caliph al-Muqtadir's women, al-Ahuz by name, who was sojourning at the holy city, to proceed to the place where, according to tradition, Joseph was buried, and having discovered the sepulchre, to erect over it a building. So al-Halanji set forth with workmen, and they found the place where, according to tradition, Joseph was buried, namely outside the enclosure of Solomon and opposite the tomb of Jacob, and they bought the field from its owner and began to lay it bare. In the very place indicated by the tradition, they came on a huge rock, and this, when they raised, they tore off a portion, and he says, I being with the workmen in the trench, when they raised up the fragment, lo, here lay the body of Joseph, beautiful and glorious to look on, as he always represented to have been. I don't know who this person was, because this is not from the Bible. As he is always represented to have been. Now first there arose from the place an odor of musk. I caused the workmen to set it down with it again into its place against the fragment of rock, to be as it has, and it is there to this day. In proof that the tradition is a true one, and that the patriarch is buried beneath it. Well,
Somebody's buried.
Yeah.
Joshua 24:32. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem, in the tract of land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. So the Bible is pretty clear. But had you ever wondered, since Joseph gave those instructions, that he wanted to be buried in Canaan, and then we don't hear much about it for 400 years? And all the wandering in Egypt, they were carrying those bones, and it appears that it was the children, because only the people who were over 20 years old would have died in the desert. If you were less than 20 years old, if you were a child, you survived that second 40-year period of wandering, and those are the children that go back and inherit the land. They have the bones. Has anybody ever thought about this before?
Never.
Pretty weird. This is the kind of stuff we do on Wednesday night. So if you haven't joined us on a Wednesday night, there's only about 8 of us in that class, and we're in this room.
Well, there's 8 of us in person. There's
That's right.
people on
Yeah,
the.
that's true.
There's
That's
people
true,
on
yeah.
TV.
That's
Or
right. There's
not
8 or 10
TV's
more.
not the
Yeah.
record, sorry.
So
But
there's
here,
maybe about as
spread out.
many as
And we're
we
spread
have
out.
here today in total.
Yes, probably that's true.
So now our class is at 6, and I noticed when we left at 7 last night, it was still getting dark at 7.
Yeah.
But as we get, this study of these people is gonna go on, and the men in our class are taking turns researching the depths of some of these things that we've never thought about before. So if you haven't tuned in, you can tune in, or you can come to class on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. This has been going on since last June, when they opened the churches again. And it's such a valuable experience. I hope that more people will either tune in or come to class, because as you see, there's plenty of room for 8 people to sit in this room
Yeah.
without having to be close to anyone else. And I thank you very much.
Great.